Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Workforce Webinar Series Technology Adoption at Utilities. I know that we still have some people joining right now, but we're just going to get started on just some logistics. First off, I just want to thank all of you for taking time out of your schedules to learn more about the various technologies and advancements happening at utilities across the country. Our speakers are very excited to share this information with everyone, and we hope you all enjoy it. Next slide, Alex. And next slide, Alec. And before we get started with these wonderful presentations, I'm just gonna go over some logistics. So first off, this webinar is being recorded. Participants will be in a listen-only mode. However, we encourage you to submit any questions using the Q&A function, which is located at the bottom of your menu bar, highlighted in that red box right there. We'll be monitoring these questions and we'll respond to as many as possible during the Q&A session. At the end of the presentation. So please, during the presentations, if you have any questions, please use that. We just ask that the chat be used for any Zoom-specific logistics problems, and we'll assist you with that. The webinar slides and recording will be sent out to all participants and everyone who has registered following the webinar. Next slide, please. If at any time you are having some audio difficulties and you're joining in through just the internet connection, we recommend calling into one of these phone numbers as well, and that might assist you if you're having audio difficulties. Next slide, please. So before we get started with our speakers, we just want to do an opening poll just to get a sense of who we have in the audience. So Alec, do you mind launching the poll for us? So in the poll, you should see a window pop up. If you don't see it immediately pop up, it might be hidden behind the Zoom right now. So it's asked to please indicate the sector that you work in: utility, state or local government, federal government, consultant, academia/educator, or other. And if for some reason you still do not see the poll window pop up, you can also use the chat function to type in your answer. And I see that we have about 70% of the audience has voted, so we'll just give this about 10 more seconds. And I also see that we have chats coming in from people as well. All right, I'll give people 5 more seconds. All right. So Jim and Winnie, just wanted to let you all know that we have 26% of our audience is with utility, 39% is state or local government, 7% is federal government, 16% consultant, 2% academia, and 10% other. And we also have some things in the chat, but unfortunately I am not that great at math to insert those into our percentages. Thank you all so much for doing that poll for us. And Alec, next slide, please. I know some of you have joined us in previous webinars, so thank you all so much. These webinars that we have been doing has been part of the water sector workforce here at EPA. They actually just launched a new website that houses all of the workforce information, and I just included that URL into the chat right now. But it has the workforce initiative, some past workforce webinars, and coming soon we'll also be publishing the workforce case studies, where we highlight 9 case studies from around the country as well. And if you are interested in future webinars, especially in 2021, if you've registered for this webinar, you will be automatically enrolled into our email list for future webinars, so you can stay up to date with everything. All right, well, I am going to hand it over to Jim Horn. Alec, next slide, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Tori. That was Tori Bahe, who's part of our team here. And thank you so much to you and Tori and Alec Egge, who you don't see, but has been so helpful in putting together all of these webinars for our team. So good morning, everybody. I'm Jim Horn. That's my title there here at EPA Office of Wastewater Management. I just want to say again, welcome. We are delighted with the turnout. We've been working closely with our speakers for the last couple of months as they sort of honed their presentations, and I certainly can't thank them enough for being here. This is part of an ongoing webinar series that I think hopefully a number of you have participated or signed into previous webinars, and we'll be looking forward to having you sign into future ones. This is really an interesting topic, and when you look across the workforce landscape, as we like to say. As we all know, technology adoption, especially new and innovative technologies and ways of learning, are really critical to the kind of the efficiency and effectiveness of our water, wastewater, and stormwater utilities around the country. But as the title of this webinar says, it's really all about the people that have got to use these technologies and new techniques and make them work on the ground. And so that's why it's really a very important part of our overall thrust on workforce here at EPA, which I'm very happy to have been a part of. And so keep that in mind as we go through this. And what I'd like to do now is turn it over to special invited guests. Winnie Miller is the Deputy Office Director for the Office of Wastewater Management here at EPA in Washington, D.C. And I'm just really happy to have Winnie on this webinar. Most importantly, Winnie has been a major champion of all of the work that we've been doing here on water workforce since she came to our office about a year ago. And so I can't thank her enough for her commitment, her encouragement, and her support throughout. So without further ado, let me turn it over to you, Winnie, for some opening remarks. And again, thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you, Jim, and I'm really happy to be here today. As Jim said, I've been here a year, and actually this is one of the favorite projects that I like to work on for water workforce. So thanks everybody for joining us today for the webinar on technology adoption. As Jim mentioned, it's part of an ongoing series of webinars that we are hosting. And I also want to thank the team of folks that have helped pull together today's webinar, especially our speakers from the Twin Cities and Gwinnett County for taking their time to join us today. As many of you know, helping to promote and sustain our nation's water workforce is one of the highest priorities for EPA's Office of Water. And of course, an anniversary like EPA's 50th not only provides an opportunity for us to reflect on our successes, but also reminds us of the responsibility to look ahead and start working to address future challenges, like the water workforce and how the workforce affects our ability to continue relying on safe drinking water at the turn of a tap and wastewater removal with a flush. Behind each drop of clean water are the hundreds of thousands of skills workers or water protection specialists that comprise America's water sector workforce. And they are the front line of environmental protection for water for this country. Jobs in the water sector provide stable employment, meaningful careers, technical training, important technical skills, and it really makes a difference in communities across the nation. Back in October, as we alluded to earlier, we issued America's Water Workforce Initiative, which is intended to serve as a call to action for many partners across the water sector to work together on this critical issue. Under this initiative, EPA will work with other federal agencies, utilities, states, associations, and many other partners to bring together our resources and our passion for this topic together. We also plan to focus a lot of attention on highlighting the importance of making water truly a career of choice by working with schools and other academic institutions to help students understand the value of a career in water. Another particular interest to us involves helping water protection specialists understand and embrace new technologies and ways of learning. This is driven by the complexity of the challenges facing the water sector utilities in areas like water reuse, advanced monitoring, asset management, and other areas. It is also driven by the estimates that roughly 1/3 of water protection specialists will be eligible to retire the next 10 years. So we want to make sure that the new generation of water specialists entering these careers are well trained and ready for the challenges of tomorrow. Simply put, helping water protection specialists obtain and maintain a high degree of technological competence is critical to ensuring clean and safe water for our communities across America. So in the face of these challenges, today's webinar is particularly relevant and timely, and I look forward to the presentations from our guests on technology adoption. Jim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Winnie, for those nice remarks, and thanks again for all your leadership and certainly all your support for me and our team here. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is turn it over to our first set of speakers. If you could bring the slides up, Alec, and we'll get going here. Our first team is with MCES. You can see their names here. I won't introduce them individually, but I'll just turn it over to Scott Bowes to start this part off, and then we'll move over to our next presentation. So Scott, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you to the EPA for this opportunity to present. Our team proudly works for the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, MCES. We serve the 7-county metropolitan area in Minnesota, and there are 110 cities in the metro area, including and surrounding Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities. And the folks in those cities are our customers. The regional wastewater system serves about 1/2 of the state's population. And you can see on the slide here the numbers. We own 9 plants and 640 miles of interceptors, and our infrastructure is valued at $7 billion. Next slide, please. My name is Scott Bowes. I manage the training unit at MCES. After we introduce ourselves and our topics for today's presentation, I'm going to provide some definitions to the technology you will be hearing about, and that will be demonstrated to you. That's the exciting part as we demonstrate some of the piloting we've been doing of these technologies. Kim, will you take an opportunity to introduce yourself and your topics, and then the rest of you?
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name is Kim Borman-Krenhab. I'm an assistant manager for the Performance, Excellence, and Analytics Department, and I'm going to be talking about how we came to explore mixed reality and how we anticipate it will benefit the Met Council. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tyler Naughton. I am a business systems analyst working in performance excellence and analytics. Today I'll be talking about what pilots we are doing, how we are doing them, how we are involving the operations staff, and then what challenges that we've been facing so far. Thank you.
My name is Todd Tolkar. I'm currently Assistant Business Unit Manager working at one of the sites here in the Twin Cities, and I will be doing the demo at the end of the presentation.
Thanks for introducing yourselves. This is Scott Bowes again. As we look at the slide, driven primarily through retirements, the last 12 years at MCES, we have hired approximately 120 wastewater treatment plant operators and collection workers. Many who have grown up with mobile devices and expect to use technology to learn and do their jobs. These folks learn primarily through hands-on training methods on the job. We believe the technology we are now piloting and the training methods we are using align with their preferred learning styles. I want to give a definition of some of the terms we're going to use today, as you see on the slide. These terminologies will be used throughout the presentation. A digital twin is a digital replica of a living or a non-living physical entity. Today, we will demo an example where we provide walkthroughs of our facilities to the training audience, such as new hires, allowing for virtual self-directed learning of the physical spaces at our 9 wastewater facilities and our collection system. Augmented reality, or AR, is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information, sometimes across multiple sensory modalities, including visual, auditory, olfactory, etc. We are piloting use of augmented reality, AR, technology, whereby subject matter experts create digital step-by-step job aids, later utilized by another employee via a HoloLens 2 headset in the work environment to complete critical job tasks. Another term you'll hear is virtual reality, or VR, is a simulated experience that can be similar to or completely different from the real world. We are considering use of this technology where employees practice and master skills required for their job in a virtual environment and afterward apply those skills in the field. For example, training for arc flash and the identification of personal protective equipment matching the energy levels of electrical equipment. This is a safe and efficient and effective training method that does not expose employees to hazards in the work environment. I'm going to turn over the presentation now to Kim Borman-Krinhop, one of my colleagues that introduced herself.
Thank you, Scott. So let me bring you into our world as support staff for wastewater operations. What if you were having someone out to do repair work on the water system in your home, and you had to identify 2 different valves at 2 different locations for the worker to turn on and off? And what if you weren't going to be home when they started their work? How would you go about getting the worker to the right location and the right valves if you weren't even going to be home? Would you write down a step-by-step procedure of where to find the valves? Would you draw a map to guide them? Or would you take photos of the valve? Maybe all of them. Guiding plant operators to a particular pipe or valve has been a significant work for many procedure writers and engineers over the years, creating drawings, schematics, and instructions for the many miles of pipelines at the Council's 9 wastewater treatment plants. But with the added complexity of expansions and updates to our 9 ever-changing plants, keeping drawings and procedures up to date is a monumental feat and one that isn't easily sustainable. So instead of writing down steps to find your valves, drawing a map, or taking a photo, what if you could just zoom in on the location of the water system in your house, directing the worker right to those valves? Well, Todd and Tyler discovered that this ability actually exists after attending a conference on augmented and virtual reality that one of our technology vendors shared with us. They discovered at the conference a technology called 3D scanning or 3D digital twins, and it's the tool that you'll be seeing them demo today. Next slide. So while we're still exploring augmented and virtual reality, as well as 3D scanning, and haven't fully implemented them into our training at this point, we can say that augmented reality and 3D scans are the only training the Met Council has, next, that puts users directly in the experience of their actual environment, which you'll see soon in the demos. That creates a learning event or experience really, where trainees can learn significantly faster because they're not having to align their training materials to the environment that they're in. Instead, these technologies bring the user into the live or digital twin of their environment and offer up videos, procedures, and even live recorded instructions. So without goggles, a trainee can view the task being performed before they actually do the task. And with the goggles, the trainee can view live holographic instructions of how to perform a task directly on the equipment in their space as they're doing the job. Augmented reality is a technology that we're currently prototyping, but will not be demonstrating today. These trainings provide consistency of instructor-led training to every trainee, and it's more like being trained by another operator than it is in taking an in-class training, because the training is taking place in their actual work environment. Trainees can also browse 3D scans online on their own, which offers added learning opportunities for their own just-in-time training. These methodologies are easy to use and easy to author. 3D scans can house many videos, labels, and embed many types of training materials. We found that augmented reality can be so easy to use that if training questions arise, operators themselves can easily add content and clarity to the training. And lastly, These technologies save us time describing how to get to locations of particular equipment, piping, and valves. Next. Like we've spent years trying to do with photos, maps, and steps. So let's see what these tools are all about. Todd and Tyler have done a remarkable job of researching and working across many groups to bring these tools to the council. I hope you enjoy seeing their demo, as well as seeing a pathway into the future.
Thanks, Kim. Next slide, please. So what are we doing and how are we doing it? Like Scott mentioned earlier, one of the things that we've been working on is digital twins and 3D mapping. 3D mapping, or creating a digital twin, is the creation of an interactive 3D replica of a particular building, area, or vehicle. Once a space has been mapped, it can be virtually walked through using a smart device, computer, or even a virtual reality headset. We've utilized this technology a few different ways at this point. We have scanned a couple of our individual small plants, such as Eagles Point, East Bethel, and the Rogers wastewater treatment plants, as well as a few large vehicles with small or single cabs. The benefits to scanning certain areas include safety. Safety such as confined spaces or heights, things like that. It can reduce trainer and trainee time by being able to visualize the space in 3D or virtual reality. We can give the trainer and trainee more time in the space without actually being there. Remote training. We have operators and maintenance folks at multiple locations, so being able to see the area they're going to be working in ahead of time is extremely helpful. Other benefits that we can see from this are getting new operators acclimated to unfamiliar spaces, conducting building tours for external people or contractors coming in to do work, and then also keeping detailed records of spaces throughout various facilities. The second type of type of training that we are doing is augmented reality training using the HoloLens headset devices, as well as Microsoft 365 guides. So a little bit about augmented reality. Augmented reality training allows users to rapidly capture high-value procedures from the expert's point of view without any pre-existing content needed. By using this technology, end users will be able to visually walk through a procedure before actually doing it, which will ensure they do the task more efficiently and accurately. We just started using this technology, so we're beginning to explore the potential possibilities of training techniques with it. There are many potential uses for this, which includes vehicle walkthroughs, lockout, tagout procedures, laboratory sampling procedures, and many more. Some of the benefits to using this type of training include reducing the SOP creation time, the ability to have an operator go through the task virtually before having to do the task, and increasing the knowledge retention of the operations staff. Next slide, please. Now, how are we involving our operations staff when piloting these new technologies? Well, first, we involved them in our initial pilot of using AR technology. One of our first instances was creating a digital twin scan of a building. And we created a walkthrough for a procedure on how to shut down a bar screen. Once creating this procedure, we showed it to a new operator trainee, had them walk through the space virtually, and then had them walk us through the process in the actual building itself. He was able to walk us through that whole procedure in a building that he had never been in before. Another part of involving is we had operators walk us through the scanned areas. Once we scanned the areas of these new plants, we had the operators help us create tags for the equipment and buildings that would help new folks become familiar with the location. They have also helped us test out our procedures using the augmented reality in the HoloLens device. One of our first experiences using the HoloLens devices, we enlisted the help of an operator. They were the ones that put the HoloLens device on and walked us through the entire procedure on how to shut down a bar screen. They wore the headset, walked us around the building, recorded themselves doing this particular tasks, as well as overlaid objects on top of the environment itself that gave us an idea of what the process would look like if somebody were to do it. And then lastly, we have asked for requests on what other specific areas or projects that they'd like us to use augmented reality and or 3D mapping to do. We are getting training requests for using the 3D mapping for vehicles, as well as creating potential training videos that incorporate both real world video as well as the virtual walkthroughs of the plant itself. One of these examples will be shown by Todd during the demonstration part of this presentation. Next slide, please. Along with these new pilots comes some challenges that we've had to endure. We've had a few technical challenges, such as using Wi-Fi, which some of the main dependencies for a lot of this technology is having a strong Wi-Fi or cellular connection, which can be problematic as some of the areas which we'd like to work in are down below ground and do not have the greatest connectivity. Another challenge that we've come across is storage and security. A lot of this new technology, the storage is cloud-based. Is cloud-based, and with most of the software solutions are unavailable for on-site implementation. So security of any sensitive information needed to be taken into account. The third one would be cost. A dependency for one of our pilots, the HoloLens devices, could be the cost. It can endure a little bit of extra money as the HoloLens devices are not exactly cheap, but a worthwhile investment for finding out a little bit more about training virtually. And then the last and probably the most important challenge is our transition to virtual training. Adopting new technology is sometimes difficult, especially for folks who hardly even use the computer. And getting them to see that using this new technology will cut down on the training time and the number of people needed to train new operators. And then lastly, it would make transitioning to virtual training would make the job easier and shorter without eliminating a person, but this can sometimes be hard to convey to these folks. So with that, I am going to pass it along to Todd, and he will demonstrate this cool new technology to you all.
All right, thank you, Tyler. I'm going to show 3 different items. One of our wastewater treatment plants that we did a 3D map of video SOP, where we kind of combine the mapping with the standard video, and then a vehicle that we mapped that we use for training. So let me start off by trying to share my screen here. And share. So what you're looking at here is one of our smaller plants. This is Eagles Point, located in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. And this is our 3D map of our plant, and I'm going to show you some different views. This is the floor plan view. So if you had mapped just one building, you would be looking down at one floor of the building, and you would be able to look at each floor. But we did the whole entire plant, which includes multiple buildings on the outside. We used 2 different 3D scanning cameras to scan this plant. One is mainly for indoor use, and that camera runs about $3,500. And the other camera is mainly for outdoor use, larger areas, and that one is closer to $20,000. You don't need that second camera. if you're doing mainly indoor use. So to get into this for your first year, you can get in for under $5,000 with the camera and the ability to view these. So we're going to switch to a second view here. This is a dollhouse view. And as you can see, this actually allows me to move around the plant now. We have tags that we've added, and as you see, they pop up. The only tags we've added at this plant is just the names of the different buildings. So you can pop around and look at the different buildings. Now, if I wanted to jump into one of these buildings at the plant and start exploring, or even on the outside, we can go and walk around the plant. And if we want to jump to a further spot on the plant, we can go right back out to dollhouse view. This is our sludge loadout building, and we can look around in here. So what we're using this for here is we can do virtual plant tours. We can do plant overviews, new employee familiarization with a plant. We can hold meetings. Let's say we're having a problem in our sludge loadout building. We have people at 9 different sites. Maybe the expert can't be at this site. So we can all virtually be at this location, looking at issues together and see what people are talking about. And another thing we can use this for is incident assistance. Let's say we had an issue in here and something got wrecked or destroyed. Maybe we had a small fire, which we've had at one of our plants at one time. What did it look like before? What does it look like after? We can go in and scan after the fact and then compare the two areas. Another thing we can do is also capture images for this. People are always looking for pictures for their presentations. So you can come in here to anything and capture an image to load into your presentation or anything that you may be working on. Let's see if I can jump into here. So in here you can see we have our blowers right here for our aeration tanks. So that's kind of what we use this for right now. What you can do also is you can select different areas of the plant and put them together, hit play, and it will do a walkthrough of that area. And then you can change it to a different walkthrough for maybe you wanted to do a tour or orientation or create a video, which is what we did with it. So we did this virtual walkthrough, combined it with regular video, and created a video SOP. And one of the drivers for this is when people go home on the weekends and they want to learn how to do something, nobody goes to Google, or very few people would go to Google and search up for a PDF or a Word document full of bullet points that tell me how to do something. When people go home on the weekend and they want to learn how to do something, they go to YouTube and they watch a video. So we're trying to create the videos at work that people would naturally want to see to learn how to do something. So this one here, this is of our Eagles Point wastewater treatment plant. This is that same plant we were just walking in and out of that 3D model. This is our pH sampling SOP. So this is the first one we did. So what this will do for a new employee, maybe someone transfers from another plant, they've never worked here before, it's going to walk them through how to do a pH sample at this plant. There is voice over this video that I have muted right now, explaining what you're doing, but this is going to actually walk the person through the plant to every station that they have to go to pull the pH sample. Then once they arrive at the station, we cut into a video of a person actually pulling the pH sample. So this is how a person can learn and get trained in on doing the pH sample at our plant. So we're combining the digital model with regular standard video here. Next, we have a truck. And again, this is the floor plan where you're looking down on the vehicle and the dollhouse, and we can step into the vehicle. Oh, let me hop up into the cab. As you can see, this is a one-person vehicle. So trading in here, you can get one person into the cab at a time, and then you can have another person come up into the cab. and point at items that are in the truck. When we have to train multiple people, this becomes problematic. So now we can pull 6, 7, 8, 10 people into a room. We can pull this up on the screen and we can go over everything that's in the truck before they even get to the truck. Then when we're done with the training, we can let them go into the truck by themselves and explore. And as you see here, some of the things we can add here, I've added a tag where I've embedded a video, and the video will automatically start playing and they can watch this video on an overview of how to operate this loader. Other tags we have in here just kind of are a high level explanation of what these controls are. Now when COVID hit, this became very useful for us. To put a person into the truck and then try and fit another one in here with them is a situation we really don't want to be in with COVID. So to teach people in the classroom using this, and you can zoom in, became very useful. So you can get very detailed as you're going over the buttons. You can read the words that are written on the labels. So after training, you can have an operator go through this space, and we even scanned all the way around the truck. So when people do their walkarounds for safety inspections before they start for the day, we can teach people what they're looking for when they're looking around the truck. So we found this to be very useful. If we can go back to the presentation, I will stop sharing my screen. You can see we had our maintenance lead really likes the vehicle mapping. Said it allows me to train more people at once and reduce the time actually needed in the truck, which today is a high priority for us. We actually have a rule at our plant right now that we're only allowed to have one person in a vehicle at a time. Other than, for extreme circumstances where we can't do it. And this is one of them those circumstances where we do the training in the classroom to limit as much as we can to having 2 people in the truck. Go ahead to the next slide. For our lessons learned, adopting new technology takes a lot of planning. People are resistant to change, so getting buy-in can take a little while. Involving all affected departments up front, example would be IS, making sure that they're on board with everything you're doing and can handle the technology you're bringing in, and go for early win, easy wins, stuff that you know that you can do and get done easily. And another thing that we've learned is find people to network with or talk to someone who has used this before. So we did talk to another wastewater treatment plant that was using AR, and that's one thing that we're always looking for too, is anyone else that is using this technology, we're happy to talk to them and share our experiences and learn from each other. In the future, we're looking for increased 3D scanning. We want to get all 9 of our plants fully scanned like you saw there. Currently, we have 2 plants and then some buildings. We do have 1 plant that is just way too large to scan all at once, so we're trying to plan and figure out how we're going to do that. We want to create easy access to all the models that we've done. We're currently working on that to get that on our internal pages so anyone in the company can access them at any time. We're looking at creating some AR training pilots using the HoloLens. That is one thing we did not demo here today that we are not ready to use, but are very excited for. And then we need to start creating the plant tours and the SOPs and the video and get more video out there for the operators and maintenance folks to use. We're really looking forward to that to match the kind of training that people do at home or when they want to choose their own training. And that's all I have. We can go to the next slide. There's contact information for our company, and I'd like to thank everybody for their time and listening to me.
Hi, folks. That was this is Jim Horn again. That was really interesting. I think I've seen the future. I remember when we did the run through of your slides a week or so ago. This is really fascinating, and I think it really is a great story about how you're moving ahead on certain things and exploring other things, but doing it carefully. And I think the whole point of your presentation was really amazing. I commend you for that. I think it's also important. I think you brought in the human connection there. I think that the whole point about how you think this is going to benefit your workforce is a good one. The other just quick comment I would make is this notion of are we creating all of these new technologies in new sort of learning techniques so we can replace our existing workforce? And I think that's an important message for management to think about as you roll this stuff out from top to bottom, that's not the point. The point is to help people do their jobs more efficiently, safely, and effectively. That's certainly what I took away from the MCES presentation. So I just like to thank the team and really appreciate your thoughts and your work. Keep on going here. And so let's turn it over to our next set of speakers from the Water Tower in Gwinnett County, Georgia. And I'll turn it over now to Kristen Vandenheuvel. And Kristen, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Jim. As Jim said, I am Kristen Vandenheuvel. I'm our Strategic Director of Research and Engagement at the Water Tower. And joining me today is my colleague, Chad Wilbanks, who is our Strategic Director of Training and Technology. And you'll hear from Chad a little bit later on when we get into the nitty-gritty of our presentation. We at the Water Tower, we're a nonprofit organization located in Gwinnett County, Georgia. We're really focused on helping small and medium water, wastewater utilities become more progressive. And of course, technology is a huge part of that. So we're really passionate about the subject and we're excited to be here today. Next slide. As many of you know, water and wastewater utilities today are facing a number of challenges. Issues such as water volatility, aging infrastructure, increased costs, increased customer expectations, they're all prompting utility leaders to consider a more holistic water management approach, this one water approach we've all been talking about. The one key challenge, though, that affects the success of the utility as they address these issues is the aging workforce. So right now, a little over 50% of water industry workers are currently at or near retirement age, and a huge percentage of those are operators. So we need to find an innovative way and different new ways to attract, engage, and retain the next generation of workers to get them excited about the water industry. Next. However, utilities are very busy with day-to-day operations. There's always something happening and may not have the time or manpower to dedicate to recruitment and retainment. So we need to work together as an industry with utilities, with nonprofits, universities, consulting firms, and other organizations to really advance the future of water innovation. And our goal at the Water Tower is to bring the right people, so those groups that I mentioned, and also the right resources that we can help provide under one roof to provide a hub for those that are intent on changing the game to connect, collaborate, and build solutions. Next. We are located, this is kind of a zoomed in view, so we're in northern Georgia in Gwinnett County. We have about 600 acres that you'll see here highlighted in green, right in between two major highways, 985 and 85, which takes you right down to Atlanta if you stay on that road. And we're located right in between a couple of Gwinnett's treasures. So you'll see down in the bottom left corner, number 1, is the F. Wayne Hill Water Resources Center. And this is a world-renowned reclaimed water wastewater facility that people from all over the world come to see the innovative processes that Gwinnett DWR is doing there. And also number 2, the Environmental and Heritage Center. So together we are growing this environmental campus. It's really going to be an ecosystem of innovation focusing on the environment and water. So this is our campus plan. So you'll hear that it's a plan. So we're under construction currently. Our phase 1 building, that letter A you see in about the middle of the screen, that is what we're currently constructing. Also letter B up in the top right corner is our field training center, and Chad will get into that a little bit later. But in our headquarters building, which is currently under construction, we'll have experimental and analytical labs, classrooms, offices, an auditorium for conferences that fits up to 250 people. So those smaller types of conferences, and also a co-working space where you can come, you can rent a desk for the day, you can rent a conference room to hold some meetings, all on this water ecosystem campus. Next, please. So although we were born out of Gwinnett County Department of Water Resources, our reach expands beyond Gwinnett, Georgia, and even the Southwest. So we're working with experts, technology vendors, and all other sorts of companies and utilities across the US and internationally as well. Next. This is our headquarters building shown as a rendering. So that space where we'll have those classrooms, co-working space, labs, et cetera. It's currently under construction. We're set to open in early 22. So with all these awesome resources on our campus, we're focused on reimagining the future of the water industry. And what does that mean? I'm sure most of you are familiar with progressive utilities or water clusters around the country. So we're learning from them, but also approaching things a little bit differently here in Gwinnett. Next, please. Even though our physical campus isn't completed yet, we're currently conducting programming in each of our 4 key areas, and we can go through these pretty quickly. So next, applied research. Next, technology innovation. Next slide, workforce development and community engagement. Next. So the key piece here that sets us apart from the other innovation centers in the United States and across the world is the integration of these 4 pillars. For example, the public can walk through our campus, they can see the state-of-the-art labs with researchers working on real projects. Operators in our training classes can come onto the campus down the road from the Field Training Center. They can see new technology demonstrations on real water flows from the Efwayne Hill plant, and so on. So the integration of these 4 areas is what makes the water tower unique and really what we bring to the table. Next slide. Talking about the first of the 4 pillars, the goal of our research program is to advance the science of water technologies that can be applied to those real world challenges that we talked about at the beginning, the ones that are faced by utilities locally, regionally, and nationally every day. Over the past year, we developed a multi-year research agenda of 34 applied research projects based on stakeholder and technical expertise to maintain and improve the Lake Lanier watershed. So when we started developing our research program, we thought, why not start in our own backyard with Lake Lanier? Lake Lanier is such a critical component to water planning in this area. So many different municipalities use the lake for their water supply, their discharge point, and other tools as well. So we wanted to focus on the Lake Lanier watershed at first, but once we get through this initial master plan, we'll continue the planning process to expand. So the plan includes 34 projects on topics, everything from nutrient management to stormwater, water quality monitoring, and other topics. It's set to be published later this month. So by the end of the year, we'll get this plan out for everyone to see. The projects will be managed here by the water tower, but we will not be conducting the research in-house. We'll put it out for competitive bids, so different utilities, research firms, universities can bid on that work, and it will be funded through a collaborative model that includes stakeholder dollars and grants. Next. Recognizing that as a society, we generally have a lack of water ethic, the water tower will provide a space for the water industry to tell its story on our campus, with peers, with our partners, and with most importantly, the public. Our goal is to be a beacon of community engagement and provide a forum where the public can visit and learn more about the value of water. We really want to get those conversations started. People who might not think of water as a career, as an important resource, to really see that in real time. And our priorities for this year pivoted a little bit. You'll see some nice water bar trucks, model water communities, environmental summits. Obviously, a lot of that couldn't happen due to COVID. So we really pivoted and focused more online. We hosted virtual events like book clubs, networking events, panels on self-care, and also developed a slate of educational videos featuring water experts from across the country for Gwinnett County Public Schools. So all of that is available on our website if you'd like to check it out. But now a little more into the technology and workforce development side. I'd like to hand it over to Chad to discuss our tech demos and training programs.
Hello, everyone. As Kristen mentioned, my name is Chad Wilbanks, and I'm the Strategic Director of Training and Technology for the Water Tower. So just a little bit about on the technology side of things. One of the things that we set out to do is establish a model for technology demonstration. One of the things that has kind of been lacking in a lot of areas is the ability to have your product or your process equipment that you would like to put into the water industry, be able to test that out on real live actual flow. So if you've got a company that has created a product and it is designed to pump primary sludge, or it's designed to work with clarified secondary effluent. However, in their manufacturing environment, they just have their process water. So having the ability to have a demonstration center where that product could actually be tested on live flows, and you could do all the testing and all the dynamics and work all the bugs out of it on the actual flows is an extremely large benefit. So that's one of the things that we're doing with our demonstration. So leading the industry in demonstrating new technologies in real time. Really and truly, that is the best way to vet performance and to really try and get the best out of the product that we're trying to introduce or that's trying to be introduced. So one of the things, even though, as Kristen mentioned, we are under construction right now, we are still working with some different technologies that we're demonstrating, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. Next slide, please. So this right here is a rendering of what our demonstration facility is going to look like. So if you remember back to the picture of that section where it said A, so this is kind of a zoomed in rendering of that. Essentially, if you could imagine having a pilot equipment on the back of a semi truck. So, you know, may it be a belt filter press or pumping technology or a filtering technology, something that you would like to test out on real live actual flows. Essentially, you back your trailer up and we hook you up to the process flows. We have, you know, PLC set up as well with power and all the ancillary devices that's needed to monitor this equipment. So essentially, hook it up to the live flows, demonstrate it, test it, you know, put it through its paces, and, you know, really kind of help develop this product out even further, more so than just demonstrating what it can do. You can actually test it out. So that's one of the great things there. Some of the flows that we have currently designed to come are primary effluent, secondary effluent, and advanced treated reuse. So one of the main components here with this as well, inside this building that you see kind of in the middle of the screen, is a large control room. So picture, you know, NASA style control center where you can actually view individual technologies, you can view plant processes, and you can also view the digital twin of the F. Wayne Hill facility that we'll have at this site. So really neat, really excited about the opportunity to be able to bring in these different technologies and test them out on actual flows. Next slide. So right here, just, you know, thinking about what the water utility workforce is and just different words that kind of make up. This right here is, you know, you can kind of read down through here, but reliable, skilled, tough, resilient, dependable, unprecedented, essential. You know, I'm sure everyone has heard the term essential worker, you know, especially during the pandemic phase. So if you think about this, you know, all these different key terms is what makes up the water utility workforce. Next slide, please. And then the future water workforce. So looking at different ways, you're going to see terms like smart, digital, holistic, diverse, GED to PhD. These are all things that are making up the future of the water. I know I've actually been in the water industry about 18 years now, and I can tell you my first job, there was one computer in the entire plant, and it was in the superintendent's office. And then when I transitioned out of working for the utility and working for the water tower, literally everyone was walking around with a computer in their hand, you know, basically an iPad, a smart device that you can scan. And so that's just a matter of 18 years, which really in the grand scheme of things does not seem like a long time. But, you know, the future of the water workforce is changing, and we've got to adapt to that in so many different ways. Next slide, please. So working with Arcadis, we had a workforce scan and benchmarking survey that reached out These are just basically sampling of the results that we got back. Looking right here, you can see the education levels of the different sections of each of the municipalities that reported back and the corresponding departments that each of those work for. So you can kind of see, the largest group of the water workforce currently for most positions is that high school diploma or GED. Next slide, please. Some of the key challenges that the utilities are facing. This was done in Georgia, but I'm sure that many of you throughout the nation can attest to this. Recruitment, aging workforce, attraction and retention of workers, lack of interest by new workforce. So these are some of the key challenges that pretty much everybody's facing. So looking at those two slides kind of coupled together, kind of really sparks, okay, how do we plan for this? How do we look into making sure not only we get things in motion to train, but we can also attract the new workforce? Because as everybody is quite aware of, there's more folks actually leaving and retiring from the industry than we actually have entering the industry right now. So if something's not done about that, that's going to cause a major problem in the future. Next slide, please. All right, so this is something that the water tower is definitely behind. This really speaks to us, workforce development for resilient communities, community-based, essentially, blended learning. So some of the things that we found to be best is immersion and exposure. So a lot of training courses that I attended earlier in my career were essentially, PowerPoint. You sit down, you spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, PowerPoints, you essentially take notes, you listen to somebody speak, and at the end of the day, you still probably need to read a book or do some other kind of things to help you learn and prepare for a certification exam, or to learn to become an operator or a maintenance technician or a lab technician or wherever your chosen field may be. However, the majority of folks will attest to breaking things down. So actually getting to be involved in the environment, having that hands-on experience, having that exposure to different technologies and different methodologies really kind of brings people up to speed a lot faster than forcing them to sit down and, watch slides or read a part of a book or whatever the case may be. Your attention and your ability to retain the information greatly increases when you're able to actually be exposed to it and kind of immersed in it and working with it more so than just reading about it or listening to somebody talk about it. Next slide, please. So this is one of the things, we're definitely striving for is building a world-class workforce development program. So essentially what that means is we want to become a hub of high quality training and professional development. This is needed so that we can essentially have that future of that water workforce. So developing that pipeline of next generation workers for the water sector. So that's working with our partners, it's working with both utilities and companies to train and equip folks to be ready to go into each area of the water sector for the future. Different programming, we offer a wide range of training through credentialing from any person from any background, basically GED to PhD, looking at online, in person, and in the field. So some of the action items from this was developing a training and professional development program beginning in 2020 and beyond, which included enhanced operator training. So I know in the state of Georgia, there's basically for your initial license, there's a 40-hour training requirement. You attend a class Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. At the end of that class, you get a certificate that basically states, you are able to move forward and sit for your exam. So that class, requires you to do some studying and it requires you to do some reading and some other things outside of it, because obviously it's kind of hard to sit there, 5 days and retain all the information you need to be able to pass your certification exam. So one of the things that we started doing is breaking that down. So kind of breaking that 40 hours down and turning it into sections and training in small chunks. So you'd have, let's say an hour to 2 hours of classroom time, and you'd have a couple of hours of actual hands-on, getting out in the field, actually in the plant, working with the pipe, working with the pump, working with a piece of equipment, and kind of blending that. And that has, shown leaps and bounds as far as taking folks that were not able to pass exams and were not able to really kind of come in and grasp, the basic concepts of becoming an operator or mechanic, to actually coming out of the program being fully functional and ready to work. So, with the retirements and with the things, folks leaving the industry, there's a steep learning curve at some of the plants, especially some of the advanced plants. So being able to bring folks up to speed faster kind of helps, mitigate that situation. And then the other thing here is, those enhanced intern apprenticeship co-op opportunities. So think about, in high schools, your junior, senior year, where kids are a part of work-study programs. So essentially, the last quarter of a senior year, you could take a group of students who are interested in working in the water industry. They can, spend part of their time at school, the other part of their time working and receiving training. And then by the time they graduate, they've been equipped and they've been trained to sit for their exam and essentially begin their career in the water industry. So that's another great opportunity as well. Next slide. So we had, beginning last year, even though we don't have our building built yet, we had worked out with, Gwinnett County and others to get some space so that we could begin doing classes, begin our program. We wanted to really start off 2020, with training and our partnership that we have with the Georgia Association of Water Professionals and their school, the Georgia Water Wastewater Institute, just kind of beginning 2021, just starting with knocking out classes and getting folks trained and getting everybody excited about what we're doing. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we were unable to do many of the classes from the beginning of the year, and we weren't able to really finish up with a lot of the ones because some of the ones from the beginning had to be rescheduled towards the end, and due to programming and some other things, we lost a lot of time and lost a lot of traction with that. We are currently planning our entire schedule for 2021 and are very hopeful for that. But I'll talk on the next slide with some of the things that we had to do to try and make up for this gap. So next slide, please. Basically kind of touching on that partnership with GAWP, we're making water wastewater classes more accessible for workers in Northern Georgia. Below, we have a testimonial from one of our recent students. Basically says, I'd like to personally thank the Water Tower for their partnership with the Georgia Water Wastewater Institute and their continued focus on workforce development. So it feels really good when we were able to still work something out, to have a class and still kind of have that positive feedback that folks are really excited and they're really engaged about what we're doing. So the picture you actually see was part of what I'm going to touch on. So in order to try and get training and try and get, programming still out there during all the issues that were taking place during the pandemic, of course, we had to focus on, social distancing measures. We had to focus on, temperature screens and, hand sanitizing stations and a whole slew of, policies that had to kind of be put in place so that we can ensure the safety of those coming in to receive the training. So that was a component of modified. So you take this class that you're looking at here, was an activated sludge class. Typically you'd have about 30 people in this class. This class unfortunately had to be reduced down to 14 people. So you're essentially cutting it in half, which is reducing the amount of training opportunities for folks. And in Georgia, we're going into a recertification year. So anyone who has water, wastewater, laboratory analyst certifications in the state of Georgia has to be renewed in 2021. So in order to get your training and your recertification points, opportunities have been limited for the most part this year, which kind of brings us to some of the things that we're doing with our online training. Next slide, please. So just kind of touching on real quick before I move into this, working through creating some online training, taking classes and courses that would normally be taught in person and working with the state of Georgia to essentially approve those classes for recertification points. Online recertification has not really been a thing that a lot of places have been excited about because there's the whole accountability thing. It's very hard to make sure that, you know, the person who's actually sitting there doing the class, taking the test, is the actual person that is working towards their recertification point. So the accountability becomes an issue, timing, resources. There's a lot of things that kind of becomes an issue with that. But we have been able to work with them and work with others to still make these things happen. So looking right here on this slide, you can see, and Kristen mentioned this early on, the hands-on demonstration, the hands-on training facility. So one of the things that has always kind of been an issue for a lot of utilities when you bring in a new employee and they're going to be operating heavy equipment, or they're going to be operating a big truck or a piece of machinery, a lot of times the first time they sit on the machine, maybe in somebody's front yard, or maybe on the side of a highway, or maybe, you know, in other dangerous situations. And their learning could cause other issues, like let's say they take the boom and they knock over a mailbox, or they hit a truck. So one of the things that is great about this is when you have that new employee, you can bring them to the hands-on training facility. They can learn hands-on how to operate the equipment in a safe training environment, as well as the vehicles, and are able to basically get all the training that they need to have them a fully functioning employee. So when they go to their supervisor for their first time and they're sent out to do a job, they know how to load, unload the trailer, they know how to bucket the equipment down, safely fill it up with fuel, you know, operate it. So all processes of equipment, from driving the truck, hooking the trailer up, actually operating the equipment, all those processes are trained in a hands-on environment. So they're able to be fully equipped with those skills and are actually, you know, contributing on their first few weeks as an employee, instead of, you know, watching and learning and trial by error. So we're really excited about that. And that's going to be coming online later in 2021. Next slide, please. So just kind of looking at this, essentially, these pictures kind of indicate, you know, what we're going to be doing, hands-on training, the heavy equipment, really any and all facets of the water industry that we can incorporate hands-on training for. You know, backflow lab, we're looking at, you know, working with meter flushing, working with lines, actually digging up, you know, putting lines back in, dummy lines, you know, all of these things kind of created in an environment, a simulated hands-on environment, so that when the employees are able to do it for the first time, if there's a mess up or a mistake or whatever, you know, it's a line that's not charged, or it's in an area where there's no hazards, or, you know, there's really mitigates any opportunity for disaster, and they can learn safely and be trained the appropriate way, instead of, you know, sometimes it's happened where this guy may train another individual who may train another individual, and they're all teaching it the wrong way. So all three of them are doing it the wrong way. So by starting off in an environment where things are trained the appropriate way, it kind of mitigates that issue as well. Next slide. So spoke about this earlier, but we're really, you know, proud to have opportunities for all arenas of life. So, you know, GED to PhD. The reason why we say GED is essentially in the state of Georgia, you have to at least have a GED to be able to work and obtain a certification. So that's kind of a prerequisite to get a state license to be an operator. You have to at least have a GED or high school diploma, but having opportunities for everyone. So let's say, you know, finishing out high school or even going on to college may not be what, you know, certain people are interested in, but they are interested in, you know, getting out, getting a career, you know, starting off in the workforce. So that kind of goes back into that work study program, and, you know, internships and apprenticeships and the co-ops, and, you know, kind of coming in, receiving the training, receiving, you know, the knowledge and skills of the on-the-job training, as well as the classroom training, and preparing them for their career in the water industry. But for those folks who are, you know, aspiring to work on PhDs and work on, you know, doing things in the water industry, that's where the applied research and a lot of other things comes into play. So we have opportunities essentially from any interest, anyone that is, you know, passionate, that, you know, has a work ethic and willing to learn, there's opportunities here. And that's one of the things that we're trying to push. One of the things that we're working on in the pipeline for, you know, some of our partners like Mueller and Siemens, having those opportunities for people who may not have any idea what the water industry is, and not even realize the opportunities that they have available for them in that industry for a career path. Next slide. So little lessons learned here. Typical training techniques. One of the things that I mentioned in my slide, we were looking at changing the way that we train before COVID happened anyway, just simply because, the old method of sitting and watching PowerPoint slides and listening to somebody talk all day long really and truly don't work as well for the newer generation. The newer workforce is more hands-on, the more digital driven, the more, interested in, screens and different things like that, and hands-on and actually being immersed in it. So we're already looking at doing that anyway. But one of the things, even with that we realized, with COVID-19, those safety protocols, decreased class sizes, and then more of an emphasis on online learning, those all came into factor. Engaging partners to demonstrate their emerging and innovative technologies. So really and truly, getting that exposure for tech providers to the water workforce customers, and then practical training for students. One of the other things, in working with folks, and, when we first started the new training technologies and the new way of, immersing folks and splitting up that 40-hour week into like a 12-week course and really breaking it down, really was addressing the "we've always done it that way" perspective. So, when training someone on a piece of equipment, typically the most senior guy of the crew was the one that did the training. That's the way they've always done it. And some of the ways that they trained were not always correct, could cause, equipment malfunction, could cause somebody to get hurt if they were trying to bypass a safety device, whatever the case may be on that. So really addressing that one statement and that perspective has been able to help us bring even more folks on and get them engaged. And of course, making the industry exciting, engaging the future of the water workforce. So before COVID-19, in 2019, we were able to go out and attend career fairs for colleges and for high schools, and working with the local school, working with the local technology, math, science divisions of schools, and really just kind of show the fun side of the water industry, show all the technology, all the different things that drive it, the science behind it, the biology, and really just, engaging folks. And so we've had to kind of turn a little bit and do some of that digitally, having digital presentations, having webinars, doing things like that. So a lot of the learning techniques and stuff that we've employed during the pandemic, I can see, carrying over post-pandemic, just like, being able to get a large group of folks together for a webinar or for a Zoom meeting is a really easy way to quickly get out to a large audience. So that definitely works. Having online training and different opportunities for folks to take training during different times. So maybe you're a night shift employee and you want to attend a class at 8 p.m. at night instead of 8 a.m. in the morning. Having that online opportunity kind of helps that. So those are all things that I could definitely see moving forward. And really and truly, the ways that were pre-pandemic, I'd like to think that, hey, maybe in another 6 months, we can kind of go back to the way things were. It's really kind of hard to tell, honestly, if we ever will be back fully to the way things were, just not knowing the gravity of the entire situation. But definitely I can see pros and cons to a lot of the things that we've learned about, trying to train and trying to do technology demonstrations and try to, engage the future of the water workforce in a pandemic where you have to socially distance and you have to limit your communications and things like that. So really and truly, it all involves kind of thinking outside the box and just always trying to attack the problem from a different angle. And that's one of the great things that really excites me about being a part of the Water Tower and being that hub of thinkers and innovators and working with partners, working with utilities, working with surrounding industries to attack problems and to come up with solutions for different situations. Next slide. So looking at this slide right here, you can see our founding partners, our innovation partners. I won't read every one of those off to you. But previously, I spoke about the Georgia Association of Water Professionals and their school. We have Siemens and Mueller, who are, very important in the water industry, as well as a lot of these other folks. Siemens definitely from the technology standpoint. Mueller, with their distribution systems, fire hydrants, and a lot of the technologies that they have as well, with some of their valves and things, and many others. So it's great to be partnered with such a large group of folks that are focused on the water industry and focused on innovation and the future of our industry and keeping things progressing. Next slide. So that is the end of our presentation. I'd really like to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to us today.
Thanks so much. This is Jim Horn again. Thanks so much, Kristen and Chad. Really appreciate that fine presentation. I liked everything about it. And Chad, I really appreciate you talking about the kind of the practical realities of operating in the COVID environment and what that may mean for the future, which could be some good things, it seems to me as well, for all the ways that you folks have been attacking that, as well as the folks at MCES. So this is great. I'm going to turn it over now to Tori Bahe so we can field some questions and get as many done as we can. And those that we weren't able to get to, we plan to shoot out to the panelists so they can respond after the webinar. So Tori, over to you, please.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the speakers. We've had a number of questions come in, and just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, at the bottom of your screen on the toolbar, you'll see that Q&A box. We just ask that you please put that on there. And as Jim mentioned, that we will, to the questions that we weren't able to answer, we'll shoot these over to the speakers and get some feedback from them as well. So the first question that I have, I will direct it towards MCES and to the water tower. For MCES, there were a number of questions regarding timing of how long does it take to scan a small plant or a tractor, just kind of that time frame that how long it takes to scan these items.
Yeah, this is Scott Bowes. Do you mind, Todd, taking that question?
Sure. To scan the tractor took me about 30 minutes. Then it needs to be uploaded, and then the tags need to be added. So to do that tractor was probably an hour and a half total of my time. To scan an entire plant, great. It really depends on the number of buildings. The Eagles Point plant that we did after we worked out the bugs would take one full day to scan that plant. And that's just to do the scanning. That's not to add any tags or anything. The one camera we have scans, each scan takes 18 seconds. The other camera we have takes 4 minutes. So depending on the camera you use too, it can play a part. But the time isn't that bad, really.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it was cool to see those different things, to be able to walk through those different plants. So I appreciate that. For Chad and Kristen, I was just curious for timing. I know you mentioned those courses that unfortunately were postponed until next year, but I was just curious, with your partnership with the Georgia Association of Water Professionals and the GWWI, I was curious, how long did it take to develop that partnership to get these classes planned?
So we had already begun working on a partnership with them in 2019. So something that we'd already started talking about and kind of already put into place. And really and truly, I would say, a matter of a week or two, maybe 3, we were trying to talk about the policies and talk about, what we would need to do to move forward and have a class, to be able to schedule a class. And that's where, once we come up with the policies and we come up with the procedure of, things we needed to do based on guidelines to keep folks safe, we were able to reduce the class size and put the class back out there for, a limited number of attendees. But really and truly, it was just kind of working with them, that constant communication, staying in touch and talking about the things that we needed to do, things we needed to adjust. From that, they begun actually doing a Zoom from the classroom. So they were teaching the class and they had, like I said, 14 attendees, but then they had a Zoom session spin off from the class. So you could actually attend that class digitally. And, although it's not the same as being in the classroom and kind of seeing some of the things hands-on, it still was another opportunity for folks who weren't able to make it in the classroom to still be a part of the training and, get some of that knowledge. So some really good things kind of came out of us having to, deal with the pandemic.
Great. Thank you so much, Chad. I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Alec.
Yeah, we have a decent amount of questions coming in here for MCS around the funding of the AR VR training program. So can you just talk a little bit about, how the funding for this project came to be, and what sort of initial upfront costs there were for it, and what sort of benefit/ROI discussions you have around taking on this pilot?
Yeah, this is Scott Bowes again. I defer to Todd and or Kim on those.
I can talk. This is Todd. I can talk a little about it. So for the 3D mapping that we showed, we bought the initial camera, which was about $3,500, and our yearly subscription for access to the things is only about $1,500. So our first year in was only about $5,000 for the 3D mapping. So that funding we had available in our budget. We did end up buying another camera, higher quality camera that works well outdoors in the sunlight, and that was $20,000. Now with the HoloLens, we did have to go to top management in our company to purchase. Each HoloLens itself costs, again, around $3,500, I think, and I believe we bought 4. And then there's multiple companies out there that run software for it. We evaluated 3 different companies, and we went with the company that was, not that we thought was the best, but what we thought was the cheapest for us, and that's going to cost us I think around $3,000 a year for the software, because of the limited number of licenses that we have, just to try and prove it out and demo it. If we decide that we like it and we go full bore, we'll again look at the companies out there that have the software for it. So to step in the door, the short answer is, for the 3D scanning, you can get in the door for about $5,000 a year for your first year, and then about $2,000 a year after that. And then for the AR stuff, you're looking closer to around between $20,000 and $30,000 for your first year to get in.
If I can just add a little bit to that, I'd like to say that the pilot was funded by our own Performance Excellence and Analytics department, because the costs were not that high. We had initially started out looking at virtual reality, which is a larger expense. And so our approach was, as these other technologies became, as we discovered them, our approach was to start with something more cost effective, to pilot it, to see how ready our department was, or the environmental service was, for this new technology. And the virtual reality may be something that we do later. It's something that ties into our learning management system. But for right now, this is where we started. And I think this is the best approach we could have taken. Thank you.
And thank you, Kim and Todd. I'd also like to add that, we'll bring back the results of our pilots to upper management, and the entire council would like to hear, those results. And that includes our transportation divisions, Metro Transit, Light Rail, et cetera. So we can share across the organization what those results were, and we can go from there.
Thanks for that, everyone. Also, for the water tower, we also have some questions about, initial funding for the entire project, and sort of where are those ongoing funding sources coming from, if you can share that information.
Sure, I can start off, and then Chad, if you have anything to add, feel free to chime in. So I mentioned that we are born out of Gwinnett County Department of Water Resources, and we are actually funded initially by the county as well. So our initial campus build is about $30 million, and that includes the main campus, the headquarters building, the demo area, and the field training center. So those three components are being initially funded by the county. From there, we have both a 501c3 and a 501c4 nonprofit under the water tower. The 501c3 covers programming that we'll be doing, and the 501c4 is more on the real estate side. So if you remember on that map slide, there were a few extra buildings on the campus that I should have mentioned. And those are out parcels that are available to be developed and for companies to move on to the campus. So as companies are engaged with us, they want access to our R&D programs. They want access to our utility pool for their customer base. They can move on to the campus and we get paid their lease. We make profits off of their lease. We also do fundraising efforts and other things like that. But the sustainable funding really comes from that real estate component.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. So I know that we do have a number of questions, but as we mentioned before, we'll take a note of these and direct them towards the speakers, and we'll have them provide some written feedback. But thank you all so much. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time and know that we're coming close to the end of our webinar. So Alec, if you don't mind just clicking to the next slide. So as we've mentioned, we have been doing a number of webinars, and so we continuously want to improve our webinar series for all of you. So there should be a poll that pops up, and we just ask on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best score and 1 being the worst, how would you rate today's webinar? And you should see a poll pop up on your screen. If you don't see the poll, you can always chat in as well. And as we mentioned before, we will be having a number of webinars in the new year in 2021. And all of you have registered for this webinar. So those emails have been automatically enrolled into our mailing list. So we'll be sending out flyers for the upcoming webinars through that mailing list. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But again, thank you so much for spending time listening to these wonderful presentations, and especially to the Water Tower, to MCES, we really appreciate it. And as we approach, this new year of webinars, we're still planning these out, but if you have any topics that you would like to see covered in webinars, please let us know. We're happy to take these suggestions as we move forward in planning. So if you do have any ideas, please respond in the chat box. And I think actually, Jim, if it's okay, I'll turn to you for some closing remarks.
You bet, Tori. Again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the turnout. This is a great investment of our limited resources here at EPA, and we get so much gratification and so much pleasure from working with all of you and sharing these great information from our great speakers at all of the webinars. And again, our speakers did a great job. I really love the information. I learned a lot. I knew nothing about, virtual reality, alternative reality, and a whole range of things. So thank you so much again. You'll be hearing from us, and we look forward to having you on future webinars. So everyone be safe over the holidays, and thanks again for everything you do every day to make sure we all have clean and safe water. Thanks again. Bye-bye.